Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sustainability and Economic Vitality Committee to order. It is February 9th, 2024. I will now call the February, like I said, meeting to order. As expected, our committee covers topics related to sustainable initiatives and the economic vitality of our great city. Note that no formal votes or decisions about city programs, policies, or budgets will happen here. Our role is to explore various topics with staff and stakeholders and community members and make recommendations to our council colleagues. We want this process to be transparent, inclusive, and easy for you to be part of wherever you choose to be. And you can share your thoughts with us by filling out a comment card about any item on the meeting agenda or by reaching out to us directly with any thoughts, questions, or ideas. The link for comment cards can be found on our committee's webpage at tempe.gov/SEV. And you'll find contact information for committee members and staff there on non-agendized questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Chin.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The next item on our agenda is item 2, which is review and approval of meeting minutes from the October meeting of the Sustainability and Economic Vitality Committee. If there are no objections, I move that we approve the minutes from the October 16th, 2023 meeting as written.
I have no objections and second that motion, so the October minutes are unanimously approved. Sorry, I can't talk today. The next item on our agenda is item 3A, public comments. This is a committee welcomes public comment. According to Arizona open meeting law, the committee may only discuss listed items on the agenda. Matters brought up by the public under public comment that are not listed on the agenda cannot be discussed by the committee. A 3-minute limit per person will be in effect. Brooke, do we have any comment cards or requests to speak for this meeting?
There are no comment cards, but 2 were submitted online, one by Katie Boligitz of the Tempe Bicycle Action Group and another by Tempe resident Jack Ketchum, both supportive of item 4A1, and those will be entered into the minutes.
Okay, would you like to read their comments? Or we don't have to? Okay. All right, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is 4A, current items and updates, and we'll begin with item 4A1, an update from our Engineering and Transportation Department. Principal Planner Chase Wallman is here with us today to provide an update on our Kyrene, Roosevelt, and Farmer Bike pedestrian project. Welcome, Chase.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor Adams, Councilmember Chin. My name is Chase Wallman, Principal Planner with the Engineering and Transportation Department, and thanks for the opportunity today to provide an update on the Kyrene Roosevelt Farmer Bike Ped Improvement Project. So this project's purpose is to provide for a north-south active transportation corridor connecting University Drive to Baseline Road. The intent is really to provide residents and visitors in Tempe with a more direct, comfortable, low-stress, and accessible connection for bicyclists and pedestrians to regionally significant destinations. Some of the notable destinations are listed here on this slide. It includes a direct connection to one of the largest employment hubs within the city, Tempe's Maker District, the regional Kiwanis Park. There is the regional Western Canal multi-use path. This directly connects to other regional pathways such as the Kyrene Canal or Highline Canal, which provide for direct connections into the town of Guadalupe or city of Chandler. This project will also connect to neighborhood parks such as Dwight Park and the soon-to-be completed Clark Park. The project's northern terminus will connect to downtown Tempe, the downtown Tempe core, as well as in close proximity to ASU's campus. And then finally, intersecting this project is another bike boulevard, the Alameda Streetscape Project, which runs along Alameda Drive from 48th Street to Rural Road. With the I-10 Broadway curb project, that will also connect to a future pedestrian bridge. So you will have a direct connection to this Alameda Streetscape project, which also travels from 48th Street to Rural. You may have previously heard of this project as the North-South Rail Spur Multi-Use Path Project. This was a project that was originally identified in Tempe's Transportation Master Plan. I have an image here on the right showing that original alignment, which is the red dotted line. That project was originally intended to be adjacent to the Union Pacific Railroad as an off-street multi-use path with lighting and landscaping. City staff pursued and were subsequently awarded a construction grant to pursue that project in 2016. With that, we began the final design portion of the project in 2018. This included robust public and stakeholder outreach, as well as our concurrent efforts to negotiate with Union Pacific Railroad to have this off-street multi-use path adjacent to the railroad. We got as far as the 30% design, and that's when it became apparent that that original alignment would no longer be feasible. And this was primarily due to two reasons associated with Union Pacific Railroad. First is that we exhausted our negotiations to get the required easements for the project. And then most importantly were an escalation in costs that were not originally identified within the preliminary study. So there was two main costs. There was the upfront capital costs. This exceeded the entire project's budget, just with associated capital costs for Union Pacific Railroad. And then additionally, they would impose an annual fee. So both of these costs would far surpass this project's available budget and the transportation program going forward. So with that, we sought feedback from council in 2019 on an alternative alignment, which would allow for this north-south active transportation corridor, but would move the project away from Union Pacific Railroad. Following that meeting in 2019, it was recommended by council to move the project a quarter mile to the west to Roosevelt Street, which is this project I'm presenting on today, the Kyrene Roosevelt Farmer Bike Ped project. With that, we had to do numerous steps in order to change the scope of the project with Maricopa Association of Governments and to retain our federal funding. That process took about 2 years, but we received approval for the new alignment along Roosevelt. So with that, we've kicked off this new project in 2022. This map on the right is showing the project corridor. So the project spans from University Drive to Baseline Road. It maintains the original alignment along Farmer Avenue from University Drive to 13th Street. This is where we move along 13th Street to the west to Roosevelt Street. We will remain on Roosevelt Street all the way to Dwight Park, where we then go east to Kyrene Road, and then finally connect to the Kiwanis Park and Western Canal multi-use path on the south end of the project. So when I was talking about making this corridor more accessible and comfortable, some of those proposed improvements include protected and buffered bike lanes where possible, a two-way cycle track along Kyrene Road, an off-street multi-use path with lighting and landscaping, ADA directional ramps along the entire corridor to improve pedestrian accessibility. New pedestrian signals are identified for a more direct connection across the street. That would just be for pedestrians. And then supplemental wayfinding signage, landscaping and lighting, and a significant portion of this project with pedestrian accessibility is that we will be completing many sidewalk gaps that exist along the corridor. So we have currently large stretches along Kyrene Road and Roosevelt Street, which are without sidewalk. This project will complete those gaps in sidewalk. So since our new project kicked off in 2022, we developed our 30% design plans and held public outreach in April of 2023. We also sought feedback from Tempe's Transportation Commission, and from that feedback of the first round of public meetings as well as Transportation Commission, we revised the designs and developed our draft 60% design plans. We then in September sought feedback for those revised 60% design plans, and that again, we saw feedback from Tempe's Transportation Commission. We also held additional outreach with residents within the Dwight Park neighborhood to seek their feedback, and the broader public outreach that we held in for the broader public as well. That brings us to December of 2023. We revised the design based off of that feedback and developed our final 60% plans. We again went to the Transportation Commission, and we also went to the Parks, Recreation, Golf, and Double Butte Cemetery Advisory Board to seek their feedback since it directly connected to those two parks as well. So now I'm going to go through the corridor. We're going to start on the northern end of the project at University Drive along Farmer and 13th Street. So from Farmer, from University to 13th Street, this corridor is much more narrow, so it was not wide enough to provide for on-street or dedicated bike lanes. However, we did want to improve the visibility of bicyclists along this corridor. So we are proposing shared lane markings along Farmer Avenue, as well as we'll be looking at supplementary lighting along the corridor and including increasing visibility through reflective measures of these chicanes and traffic calming along the corridor. So the overall intent here, as well as directional ramps where needed. So the overall intent is to improve visibility along the Farmer Avenue. And then 13th Street, this is also another constrained corridor. We already have dedicated bike facilities. This is about as much as we're able to accomplish to still accommodate vehicles as well as transit that runs along the corridor. So this section will largely stay the same, what you see here of 6-foot bike lanes and your travel lanes. But we will be looking at the ramps at each corner to make sure that those are accessible directional ramps. Now we're getting to the portion as we turn south at 13th Street to go along Roosevelt Street. So currently as it exists today, we have a smaller bike lane, 2 travel lanes, and a center turn lane along this corridor from Broadway to 13th Street. What we'll be proposing here is to remove the 2-way left turn lane. This will enable a buffer space between the bike lane and the travel lanes, as well as new sidewalks. This is the section which is missing a lot of sidewalk along the corridor. So through these improvements, the narrowing of the travel lanes, the removal of the 2-way left turn lane, which I should mention, we did a data collection just to make sure that that 2-way left turn lane, the center turn lane, wasn't necessary for the project and would still accommodate the turning vehicles along the corridor. So that's why we're proposing to remove that. In its place, we are proposing a 5-foot buffer space, which would have these vertical delineators and a product similar to this tough curb, which is pictured on the right. So this gives a good representative image of what that may look like along this corridor, where we'll be including these vertical delineators and a physical separation between vehicles and bicyclists along the corridor. And then this image on the bottom right just shows one of those missing gaps of sidewalk. All of our improvements that we're making are going to be within city right-of-way. So you'll see that there's some landscaping that encroaches, and it'll be required to move standpipes or other utilities that are within right-of-way. This one pictured here is actually a public art integrated standpipe, so we programmed funding in order to relocate that and make any necessary repairs should it get damaged during the relocation. And then we'll do the necessary landscape pruning for anything that encroaches within city right-of-way, but we will work with those residents along the corridor. Another consideration for this stretch is that this is currently an orbit flag zone. So this is an important transit route for our neighborhood circulator along Roosevelt Street. So currently it operates as a flag zone, which means that there's not designated stops along the corridor. Since we want to provide for this physically protected buffer space, we worked with our transit operations team to identify high boarding locations for a transit route so that we can implement designated stops along the corridor. So this would allow us to have a good amount of continuous buffer space with the protection, but we're still servicing high ridership locations along the corridor. These are notated within the red rectangles. And then additionally, through the feedback, we were asked to pursue a dedicated crossing to get users from the east side and west side of Roosevelt Street over to Clark Park in that future orbit stop as well. So that's something that we'll be pursuing now with our 60%, post 60% design. And that's indicated here in this blue arrow. As we continue our way south, this is the section from Broadway to Alameda. Similarly here, we will be proposing a protected bike lane. This will include 11-foot travel lanes, so no removal of travel lanes, a 3-foot buffer space, which includes that physical buffer, and then 5.5-foot bike lanes. Additionally, along this corridor, we'll be improving the sidewalks and the directional ramps. And this image on the bottom left is actually showing the intersection of Alameda Drive streetscape. So that gives you a sense of the connection point to our other east-west running bike boulevard, and will be representative of what our improvements will be on Roosevelt Street. Just this Alameda streetscape does not include the physical buffers that we'll be including. And then as we continue south from Alameda to Southern, there's enough space available here that we will be retaining the 2-way left turn lane. This will accommodate some of the industrial uses here. We're within that maker district, so there's predominantly light industrial and some other commercial uses. So we will be retaining the two-way left turn lane, the travel lanes, and again, incorporating a buffered and protected bike lane. And then as we continue south along Southern, this is where we get into the Dwight Park neighborhood. So prior to our second round of public meetings, we had 3 different households reach out to us within the Dwight Park neighborhood, which requested an on-site meeting with staff to relay their concerns with the proposal to have a multi-use path going through Dwight Park. So staff from engineering and transportation as well as community services met on site with those residents to better understand the concerns associated with the previously proposed alternative, which is alternative 1 going through Dwight Park. Through that meeting, the concerns that were raised included a protection of the mature trees within the park. It also had a consideration to not reduce the available turf or grass area within the park, as well as a general concern about construction impacts and the sharing of the path between bicyclists and pedestrians along the route. So with that, we revised the design of our first alternative. Instead of making it a straight path, we made it more of a meandering path in alternative 1. And with this, we proposed to protect and place the existing mature trees. There's also a decomposed granite area, which is shown here on the top right image. We would propose to put the path primarily within that decomposed granite area so that it was not taking as much space as we originally identified with our first round of public meetings. Additionally, we also committed to providing for another alternative to get public feedback on, and that was alternative 2. So with alternative 2, this would be a similar improvement to what was shown on Farmer Avenue. It would be an on-street improvement. The width is not enough to provide for a dedicated bike lane, so this would be a shared lane marking improvement. So the bicyclists would share the road with the vehicles, and then we would make the necessary improvements as well to the sidewalks. So we committed to revising the design of alternative 1 and then introducing this new alternative so that we could get broader feedback during our public meetings, which would be held 2 weeks later. So to go in more detail about alternative 1, this is just showing a conceptual plan view of what that alternative would look like. You'll see some of the existing trees that are this lighter green color and our new proposed trees with our project, the darker green color. And so this path meanders much more than we previously identified, but it still provides for a 10-foot wide multi-use path, which is our standard to accommodate both bicyclists and pedestrians in both directions. So we would propose to connect Manhattan Drive to Roosevelt Street with this, again, primarily placing the path within the decomposed granite area and making the ramp improvements and including supplemental pedestrian lighting as well. And this lighting would match the existing park's lighting, so this would not be a new standard. And then with alternative 2, that would be that shared lane marking, which would go, instead of going through Dwight Park, it would deviate and not connect to Dwight Park and go along La Jolla and Wilson Street. So this graphic is showing the feedback that we received through the public survey, which was open from September 20th to October 10th. Within that survey, we had a majority of respondents prefer alternative 1, the Dwight Park path alternative. 84 respondents preferred that, as compared to the 15 that preferred the shared lane marking alternative. Additionally, some of the other themes were to include additional orbit stops, so we'll be working with our transit team to identify additional stops along that corridor, and then to provide for more physical barriers and addition of vertical delineators. So we're going to look and work with our traffic engineering team on what the appropriate spacing would be for that to include better visibility. And then finally, we were asked to extend the project further to the Western Canal entrance on the north side of Baseline Road and not just stop at Kyrene Road to facilitate a better connection between those two path connections. So after reviewing the feedback, we are pursuing alternative 1, which is the Dwight Park path alternative. So as we get further south and east of Dwight Park, we're then on Kyrene Road. So this image on the top left is showing the existing condition. Currently on Kyrene Road, we have more narrow bike lanes as well as wider travel lanes in this area. What we'll be proposing here is actually a 2-way cycle track, which will be one of the first for City of Tempe. What this will include basically is that you have the bike lanes side by side with each other It will be protected by these physical barriers as well as the vertical delineators. And this buffer space is also expanded from some of the other corridors. So what we're proposing here is to have a 5-foot buffer space with the physical barriers and then a 6-foot wide southbound bike lane and a 6.5-foot wide northbound bike lane. Additionally, this is one of the areas I talked about before that was missing sidewalk, so we would look to include sidewalk along the east side of Kyrene Road. And this is primarily done just through the narrowing of the travel lanes, as well as obviously relocating the existing bike lane that's on the west side of Kyrene over to the east side of Kyrene. And then this is the area that I was talking about for the Western Canal connection. So the current route is shown here in this white dashed line that's on the right image. So the current route to get users from the south side of Baseline Road, where the Western Canal exits, to the north side of Baseline Road, where the Western Canal continues. This is shown through the white dashed line. So users would have to navigate across the railroad, across a few driveways to the nearest signalized intersection, and then again go back east to the Western Canal Path entrance. What we'll be proposing with our project is this red dashed line. So that includes a new dedicated pedestrian signal across Baseline Road. This would directly connect to the Western Canal Path entrance on the south side of Baseline Road. And then additionally, along the north side, we would have a wider sidewalk. It would actually become a side path at that point, so a 10-foot wide pathway, which would continue, and users can either connect to our two-way cycle track on the previous slide, or they will continue along a 10-foot wide off-street multi-use path until they get to the Western Canal Path entrance, which is that red circle on the north side of Baseline Road. This image on the left side is just showing the regional connectivity. So again, the blue lines are the off-street multi-use paths. There's significant connections through the Western Canal, Highline Canal, Kyrene Canals. Those go to our neighboring cities in the town of Guadalupe. And then the red represents the bike lane connections for the project.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
Are there going to be lights at both Baseline on the left side and where the circles are, and at the Western Canal Path?
Yeah, and let me move on to, thank you, Vice Mayor Adams. I'll move on to this slide, so that'll hopefully
Okay. Sorry.
show that. So we'll be proposing just one dedicated signal here, and that would be on the east side, east of the railroad tracks at the entrance of the Western Canal on the south side of Baseline Road. So this connection would be made along the south side of Baseline Road with a new pedestrian signal. This signal is similar to the ones that you see at Grove Parkway, at the Highline Canal, or on Elliott and the Kyrene Canal. So it's not the flashing red that you see maybe on Western Canal, like on Rural or McClintock. This will be a solid red phase, and it'll look like our other signals, which will just be solid for the pedestrian crossing. It's only activated when the pedestrian pushes the button, and then otherwise it won't be activated. So it'll look very similar to those. And we're proposing that just east of the railroad tracks, and then to facilitate a connection over to the other side of Western Canal, we'll be providing for a 10-foot wide pathway, which will include supplementary lighting, as well as additional signage for the one driveway that it does cross, just to alert them that there might be increased vehicle or bicycle traffic along the corridor. So that brings us to our next steps of the project. We have our consultant on board, so we will be gathering all the feedback that we've received, revising to our final 60% design stage, and that is anticipated to happen in June of 2024. With that, we would anticipate the completion of the design in September of 2024, and estimate a bid advertisement, so advertising the project to potential contractors in May of 2025, and start construction in August of 2025. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for the informative presentation. Councilmember Chin, do you have any questions or comments for Chase?
I do.
Go
Thanks,
for
Chase. Well, one thing I want to emphasize for everyone watching, listening, is that these safety measures aren't simply bicycle-centric. I think it helps everyone. I think it helps those of us who are driving in our cars. And what was obvious to me are the addition of sidewalks for pedestrians, it makes it safer for everyone. And we have some overall goals in the city for safety with the Vision Zero. This simply supports those initiatives, I think. So I really am happy to see that. A couple of questions for my education. The color of the sharrows are always green, but the regular bike lanes, as they appeared in your illustrations, were white. What's the standard industry convention for the color scheme?
So what we'll be proposing with this project, and this was just typical cross-section, so it doesn't do a good job of illustrating where that green symbol is located. We'll be proposing to put those at all the intersections, so where you might have a vehicle that's turning off of an adjacent street or something, that increases visibility of that bike lane. So we would propose with this project to have those green bike lane symbols after each intersection.
So for the sharrows.
And that's for the bike lanes. And then, yes, for the sharrows, we're reviewing that still with our traffic engineering team. It does provide for greater visibility to have that green backed sharrow symbol, but they're looking at other alternatives as well as far as increasing visibility. So it will be that sharrow symbol, which has the chevrons
Right.
And the bike symbol on it. And currently proposed is that green backing to it as well to increase visibility.
Good. I think something that is not just white helps with visibility and awareness, right? We go about our day and sometimes we're not thinking. That helps a little bit. And I've asked, and I've seen this in other cities, and I won't ask you the direct question. I'll just plant a seed of glow in the dark green or something that at night can be more reflective. Especially on some of those streets that you pointed out, may not have as many street lights.
Right, and that's something that we're looking at too. I believe the green thermal, and I'm not a traffic engineer or a maintenance team, so I'll look at other people for that. But it does have reflective qualities to it, as well as we'll be looking for those vertical delineators. Those will have reflectors on it and those tough curbs. So we're really increasing visibility, as well as placing reflective pavement markings on those chicanes along Farmer Avenue. And then our supplemental lighting, we're really interested, obviously, in increasing visibility along the whole corridor. So there'll be a lot more reflective pavement markings as well as the supplementary lighting. So I think overall it will increase the visibility.
Great. Then the final thing I had was you mentioned Orbit, and Orbit shares the road, and they tend to be wider vehicles. So I look to those of us, those in the audience and others maybe listening or watching who may have access to communicate to the Orbit drivers, be aware because they are wider and they do encroach in the bike lanes, just to know that that's very important.
Right.
And I've had several friends let me know, they were very vehement about safety, that look, those Orbit drivers come close to us, whether they mean to or not.
Yeah.
So just raising awareness.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Chin. That's something we're working very closely. We always collaborate very closely with our transit team. They're well aware of this project and the importance, obviously, of safety and visibility of all these users, bicyclists and pedestrians and just other vehicles. So we'll continue to work with them, and I think it will help supplement having these dedicated stops so that you don't have the potential conflict areas of the Orbit crossing over bike lanes.
Right.
That will be greatly reduced by having these dedicated stops now rather than the flag zones.
Great. Thank you, Chase.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Chin, for those informative questions and comments. I also have some comments. Farmer and 13th Street, that's going to slow traffic down, which I love to hear. Plus, it's going to be easier for bicyclists to ride on, so I'm really happy about that area. Also, Roosevelt to Broadway, I like the buffered lanes for the bicycles, and that'll make it a lot safer for our bicyclists. I like that you added a stop for my Clark Park project, and I'm quite excited about our opening in April, our big opening. I like that trees are being saved and added, and so that's really good. Thank you for pointing that out. I like the two-way path on Kyrene and the added sidewalks, so everyone can be safe on Kyrene, because that is a narrow road that I'm familiar with. This was a wonderful presentation, and I don't want it to be missed that this project will probably save lives because the lanes that you have now for our bicyclists and our pedestrians. And I'm just really, really proud of this project for you guys. And this was an excellent and very specific presentation, easy to understand. So thank you, Chase. Great job.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Adams, for those comments. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll now move ahead to item 4B, new items for consideration. I believe we have one new item, 4B1, presentation proposals for future council committee meetings. Councilmember Chin, do you have any updates you'd like to see at the next SEV committee meeting?
Not at this time.
Okay. That's the last of our scheduled discussions today, so we'll move on to item 4C, announcements. I have no announcements today. Councilmember Chin, do you have any announcements today?
Just wishing everyone a happy new year. That starts tomorrow, the Lunar New Year. What did we decide before the meeting started? The year will be 4,722. Yes. Yeah. Don't write 4,021 on your checks.
I like that. Thank you, Councilmember Chin. Our next committee meeting was scheduled for Friday, March 8th, 2024. Thank you all for being here today, both virtually and in person. And with that, we are adjourned.